it's Brad Laurie, or BlockchainBrad, and today a very special interview with two key members of CasperLabs. Now, many of you since 2018 would certainly know of this team and of this tech, but today we're going to explore all facets of this as we move into 220 on the blockchain. So thank you to both the CTO and CEO for being here to explain all these updates for CasperLabs.
Thanks for having us on. We're very happy to be here.
Likewise.
It's our pleasure.
And thanks, guys, for making the time. I know you're both very busy. And for those who are wondering, this is a free interview. There's certainly no payment I'm receiving on behalf of CasperLabs, but there is some editing support that they are providing. So thank you to both of you for that. Now, let's go straight into this and let's explore this in the most objective way we can, guys. Medha, firstly, let's start with you. I've listened to many of your podcasts, your information. You're very much a proponent of open blockchains. Do you want to just give us a brief sort of background on yourself and how you qualify to be in the role of CTO?
Oh gosh, yeah. So I fell into technology in the early 90s, pre-internet. And, I started working with tech, well, early 80s, actually, if you want to kind of say how old I am. So I started with the first version of MS-DOS in my basement and was the first person on my dorm room to have a computer. And when the dot-com boom started happening, I was in the middle of all of that. And I've been running, large software teams for about 2 decades. Primarily, large professional enterprise grade systems is where I was an engineering leader. And I fell into the blockchain space, really fell in love with blockchain in early 2017, late 2016. And I was approached by Mrinal and other members of the open source blockchain community to found CasperLabs in October of 2018. And it's been a wonderful ride ever since then.
Right, and I did have a look at your credentials. They really are clear that you have that technological background, you have that knowledge. But what I also liked is that you don't pull any punches. You're a straight talker, you get right to the point, and you are passionate about the transition into open blockchains and really showcasing what they can do. Now, Mrinal, also for you as the CEO of CasperLabs, you are certainly one that is well known right throughout blockchain, respected also for your own experience. Do you want to give us a bit of a recap on why you are well positioned to lead this out?
I think really I've been an open source proponent right from 2002. That's when I started undergrad in computer science, and I've been a proponent of open architectures and open source right since then. I was an open source contributor to the BitTorrent project. Less said about what's happened now, the better. But open source and open architectures are something that have fascinated me for a long time. Weirdly, my career took a bit of a left turn after I graduated from Carnegie Mellon with a master's. I kind of went to Wall Street and spent some time at Bain Capital, a $1 billion hedge fund. But I think that combined with all the work I've done on open source, and at heart I'm a programmer. At heart I'm really a computer scientist. Helps me see, what this looks like from both perspectives. If you're gonna give a great alternative to Wall Street, it's important to understand how it works and also understand, the technology you're bringing to bear. Very similar to Medha, and I think why we sort of had a mind meld while talking about this is, our core principle is the absolute maximum decentralization and distribution we can possibly achieve with a platform. Permissioning, closed source, et cetera, are all things that we find extremely antithetical. I mean, it makes our skin crawl sometimes.
And it's so great to hear that, and that's exactly why we want to explore CasperLabs today, because we've seen many efforts to, showcase the blockchain, but many people haven't really understood that many of them are, in fact, permissioned architectures, and we want to move away from that. And at Medha, you've been very clear in your presentations about the value of permissionless systems, of trustlessness as well. So let's really go into why CasperLabs needs to exist without all of the fluff, because that's one thing that none of us like to talk about. Now, the claims that CasperLabs make, and obviously you guys are supporting that, are things like being truly scalable, being a next-gen blockchain. And we hear, as you'd appreciate, a lot of tired narratives in that domain. And a lot of them are exhausted because we've heard the million TPS call, we've heard just too much BS in the space. So let's explore what is real, what is valuable, especially in the context of Ethereum, for example, being one of those generation 1 blockchains that really showcase what new applications can do, and more importantly, what the smart contract can do.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ethereum really opened our eyes to what could be possible with a Turing-complete system using blockchain technology, right? And if you look at the blockchain space, the most highly valued blockchains out there right now clearly are Bitcoin and Ethereum. And when you step back and ask yourself, well, why is that? It's really because they're trustless, right? They're completely trustless. Anybody can come and go from the network at any time without asking anybody to do anything, right? And that's where you get this notion of permissionless. Permissionless is a new term, if you think about it. It really exists primarily in the blockchain space. You didn't really hear the term permissionless unless you're like deeply imbued in this technology that we're working in. And what that means is that if I choose just tomorrow that I want to run an Ethereum node, I can do so without asking anybody. And if you look at the newer blockchains, now the flip side of that is that Ethereum is slow, right? It has to go, you have to do a significant amount of work. There's a consensus algorithm known as proof of work that requires a good amount of energy consumption. It's very effective in that it identifies, it's very hard to do bad things to the network. You can't be a bad actor and get away with it so easily. The consensus works, but it is very slow. And there's a desire, right, for more throughput. And a lot of proof of stake protocols, which are basically, you put up a bond, and in exchange for putting that bond up, in the traditional world, we think of a bond in the same way. You put up that bond, and in exchange, if you're a good actor in the network, you can continue receiving rewards. If you do something bad, you lose your bond, right? And so this is the basic principle of proof of stake. But the problem is a lot of the proof of stake protocols, getting that secured is very, very difficult, because you have to account for the fact that people are constantly trying to attack the consensus protocol. And the reason for that is there's a lot of money on the table, right? Decentralized blockchains hold a lot of value. There's trillions of dollars of value on Bitcoin. Same thing with Ethereum. And so the prize potentially could be huge if you can manage to get away with an attack. And what makes it very difficult is having proof of stake algorithms that are both fast and secure and correct. And what you find people doing is like, well, we'll just deal with the security thing because we know all the people that are participating. Well, then wait a second. Like, if you trust everybody, then it's not trustless because you guys all talk to each other, right? So you vote somebody in, or you select the group of people that are participating in the network because you say they're all part of certain organizations and they have competing interests, and therefore they'll keep each other.
The boardroom effect.
Yes, exactly. But we all know, we've all seen plenty of times, there's a reason why there's antitrust laws in the world. There's a reason why you see cartels forming, right? You would think that OPEC is a well-known cartel. So we know in the long run that these things don't actually work, right? And so that's why you need, particularly when you talk about digital money, right? Imagine if somebody could just decide tomorrow that you didn't get paid. Right? Imagine if somebody could decide tomorrow that just with a flip of the switch, they're all going to agree to just shut off the money supply. That it would be devastating for society.
Right. And it sounds much like a bank today, the powers of centralized entities like that. Obviously, we want to move away from that, and you guys want to lead away from that, not only when it comes to the narrative of money or monetary value, but also for technological value, especially when it comes to applications on your platform as you build. Now, Mrinal, I want to talk about this more in the context of POW, moving across to your unique POS model, because it isn't just a POS model or proof of stake. And as you explain this, Mrinal, can you just assume for the majority don't know that much? So if we can drop it down to that lay speak for a moment and really qualify the move you've made from proof of work, especially as Medha said, the key asset for proof of work has been its security. That's always been that narrative, and the trade-off has been its throughput, has been its speed. And many argue that Bitcoin, for example, doesn't necessarily need that if they assume one type of narrative. And many will argue, in different camps. But let's move across to what you're about, what you're trying to build, and how you are trying to move forward in this space.
Yeah, I'd love to. If I may, could I just give some context, which would probably help what I go into? I think one of the issues with the industry at large, I've been an investor in the space since about 2012, is we've painted ourselves into what I call the TPS corner. I think everyone optimizes just for TPS. Medha had a really good quote in one of her interviews, which actually articulated something I've thought but couldn't put into words very well, which is, look, if it's not fully decentralized and permissionless, it doesn't matter how fast it is. You've shut the value proposition of blockchain right in the heart at that point. If it's not an open standard and completely open system, why bother? It doesn't matter how fast it is. And so let's start from there. So everything I say follows on from there. TPS is important. We want it to get as fast and as efficient as possible, but without sacrificing decentralization and security.
Right.
So let's talk about why we find proof of stake really interesting versus proof of work. And this is not to say proof of work doesn't have its place. Mm-hmm. It's a different modality, but I'll break it down. The key difference between proof of work and proof of stake is that in proof of work, the majority of your computational power, 90% plus, is used to generate random numbers or hashes, and these have no further utility once they're generated. So you're getting your security because you're putting a lot of computational power to generate these numbers, but they do nothing once they're done. They're lost to the ether, never to be used again.
Right.
In a proof of stake system, since you're not using the generation of hashes to gain security, but rather a bonded amount of tokens that have economic value, you can refocus all of that processing to do useful work, meaning running transactions, developing consensus, etc. Now, people will ask then, why do people do proof of work if it's less efficient? It's an easier and clearly we're not seeing a proof of stake chain really dominate yet, and it's a hard challenge to do proof of stake. The other thing that's really cool about proof of stake, in my view, is how security scales. But scalability is not. When people say scalability, they just talk about TPS. When we think about scalability, we also think about how does the security of the system scale? How does access to developers scale?
That's a good point. That's probably the most important point right now.
I agree. And the beauty, I think, of proof of stake systems is there's a direct correlation between value of the network and its security. Meaning, if the value of the network increases threefold, the cost to attack it has now immediately increased threefold. Mm. Now, you could argue in proof of work that kind of happens, but in proof of work, you're only rewarded based on the emission curve. So the maximum amount of hardware you can put against the network profitably is correlated to the emission rate. So if you want more security, you have to increase emission. In proof of stake, since your value or relative vote on the network is tied to how much you own, it absolutely correlates with the value of the network directly. And this is a really, really interesting macroeconomic modality. And that's what makes it really, really interesting to us.
Absolutely.
Now, the issue we've tried to solve is, okay, so now we can refocus a lot of this processing power, but how do we make proof of stake completely decentralized and permissionless? And what's helped us is don't use TPS as our final benchmark. We'll be a lot faster than the proof of work blockchains anyway, but first get the decentralization and security right. No one's doing 1 million transactions per second right now on anything anyway. So right now, focus on that, and then you can have really, really interesting engineering fixes and other things to ensure that the system eventually keeps getting faster and faster. Things like sharding, reducing block size, getting our algorithms more in order. But really, our focus is security and decentralization first. Mm-hmm. But our VM is really, really efficient right now. Medha, what are we running? 150 to 200 transactions on a single core machine every second?
Right. Yeah, but between 150 to 200 token transfers a second. That's right.
And you raise a really point there. I think not enough is raised about the need for scalability, in the sense that right now with your VM, it's doing its job. It's actually doing more than that with regard to the use cases out there. And as you build your platform, you're going to need more scalability, but not enough is said about what's actually needed at the time you sort of embark on this longitudinal journey. And then thus, coupled with security is that imperative right from the start. You guys have both had the advantage also of seeing that first gen Ethereum emerge. You've also had the advantage of Vlad also supporting both Ethereum and yourselves as well with his research and knowledge and just general skill sets. So in that sense, I wanted to ask you, in the context of POS, with Ethereum's vision to make the transition from POW, how do you see yourselves in that context, especially given that they are also looking at technologies to help them better scale and arguably help them improve in sync with their security, built as traditionally that POW model? Right.
So, we see ourselves as very friendly to Ethereum. We see that our research will ultimately, we hope, benefit the Ethereum Foundation and the Ethereum community at large. We believe that there's plenty of room in the space for the work that we are doing and the work that Ethereum is doing. There really isn't any way for us to prove that a fully decentralized, pure proof-of-stake protocol, based on the Ethereum research, is actually tenable unless you build a public blockchain around it, right? You can't, mathematics is all great, and we have real mathematical proofs that show that our blockchain is secure, but it's got to stand the test of time, right? Because the mathematicians think they got everything, right, but there's that fourth quadrant problem, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so the best way to really be able to show the Ethereum Foundation that, yes, we've got a protocol that's stable, it works, it's secure, is to build a blockchain around it, right? So you build a blockchain around it, you deploy it, you have some real value on it, and there's a big carrot out there, right? And do you see if the malicious validators can actually build another implementation of a malicious client and attack the protocol? That's really what it takes to know if it's going to stand up in the long run. And we will continue having to refine the protocol, right? We're going into our testnet at the end of March. And one of the things I think that's really important to talk about is, CasperLabs incentivized testnet, we are inviting people to attack the network. Like, we want to know if you can find a flaw in our protocol. And it is our intention as part of the incentivized testnet phase to put big bounties out there for, smart people to come and attack the network, because we want to catch it before it goes live.
Absolutely. And Medha, kudos to all of you for doing that. And one thing I have noticed about all of you is that you haven't rushed to launch. And you guys would both know, in the ICO and IEO boom, that certainly happened to capitalize on the opportunity, the financial opportunity for investment. Now, one of the things you have secured is financial backing, and we'll go into that later. But what I did like is that with that, you didn't rush out and then just become an active protocol, prematurely. So with the testnet, that's coming, you're opening that up to the best developers in the world to really challenge, to lay down the gauntlet and say, well, here we are as a starting point as a testnet, really explore our code and see what you can do with it, because you want to have, again, a very secure system fundamentally for the future. That's right. Okay. We believe that the protocol will scale in that it will be, significantly faster than the current proof of work protocols, right? But more importantly, that it will not sacrifice security. It will not sacrifice fault checking. It will not sacrifice, checking for malicious actors in protocol to get that scale. Right. And one of the things I wanted to ask you both is, do you feel confident, given that Ethereum is making a long-term transition? A lot of the talk is in mid-year, but let's be real, that's not going to happen. It's going to take a lot longer for that transition. You guys have had the advantage, once again, of seeing all of the development of blockchain innovation, especially in open blockchain sort of sphere, to develop this subsequently. So does that put you in a good position as you move forward this year? I think it puts us in an extremely good position. We are learning from, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? Like Satoshi and Vitalik have done incredible things for the space, and we're obviously taking lessons learned from them. One of the interesting things I think that puts us in a great position
one, we have a clean slate. We can just iterate very rapidly and build what we need to build, right? I mean, Ethereum, it does have a lot of stakeholders. It has a lot of value. They have to move, be very, very conservative with their incremental implementations, which is reasonable, why it will take longer. And even outside of the blockchain space, you see that very, very large companies, they have a lot of inertia. It's hard for them to move quickly, right? We're a small startup. We don't have active customers to support, so we can do what we need to do and iterate very rapidly. So we definitely have that in our back pocket going for us. But there's another interesting thing that I think we have going for us is that myself and other members of the engineering team, we come from industry. And so as being a senior engineering leader in some of the largest marquee software development companies out there, I know exactly what I would select for a protocol if I was building on a protocol and I was going to take that dependency on that protocol into my production platform where I'm beholden to customers and I'm beholden to investors. And there are certain things that I need to assure that I can continue servicing my customers in interest of my investors. And so we went ahead and built that. Right, we built all of that into the CasperLabs node. So while there's a massive amount of focus on consensus protocols within the blockchain space, and rightly so, we have spent a lot of time working on the core platform and protocol around what do developers need? What does business need?
Right.
What makes it actually a viable product, a platform product that you can develop against? Treat it like a trust layer for your application.
And Medha, that's why I really wanted to talk to you guys and also explore more of your team. And Mrinal, you could perhaps extend on this, is that not only are you building the technology and the platform, but you do have that understanding of business, especially in the context of trying to educate those in the know when it comes to, I guess, the blockchain sector, but we're talking about those permission sectors as well, so that they can better understand why they should perhaps consider that trustless design, why they should transition into this, and what's the financial benefit. Because a lot of people naturally assume in the business world that the permission systems are of core value, but essentially they're databases, much of the time, and aren't doing a lot outside of their silos. So for you guys to lead not only that tech narrative and the business, that is truly rare. You don't really get a lot of that. And so I went and had a look at your team. What was impressive is that you have MIT, you have Harvard qualifications in the mix, you have really strong developers engineering. I mean, the majority, and in fact, as you guys would be able to teach us, come from that engineering and technological background. So do you want to just give us a summary, Mrinal, of the qualifications of your team, the strength of your team, whether your team's building, and why, in fact, your team is likely to be successful in building CasperLabs?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I'll start off with, I think this was a very conscious decision. What we did out the gate is we realized the primary directive, at least in the early stages, is to get the technology right. And we've staffed the team accordingly. To your point, we've not done, crazy marketing or done an ICO or anything like that. That's by design. Our business team is 7 to 8 people. Our development and research team is 26, 27 people. That's by design. I mean, typically when you look at it, there's a lot more people doing outreach, marketing, and trying to sell the product than the actual people building the product. So our focus has always been tech and research first. And so, we've staffed the company accordingly. Now, over time, as a customer base grows, we'll need more service professionals, et cetera, to ensure that we're doing a good job. But, given that our platform is permissionless, open source, et cetera, we'd be absolutely glad for other people to build those businesses. And so I think that really helps with scaling. The reason why I think, the team is special is, we have a combination of really cutting edge research thinkers as well as really practical engineers. And so I'll give you an example. Like, for example, the liveness proof, our variant of CBC Casper that's called a highway protocol was the lead author on it is Dr. Daniel Kane, a very renowned mathematician. He's won a ton of mathematical prizes, double PhD from MIT and Harvard. And, really, he's produced the first provably live iteration of CBC Casper that's implementable. But along with this, we have people like, Ed Hastings and a lot of other developers who have built production code that's used by millions of users out there. they know what it takes to, like, they know where systems break. They know the little fixes you have to do to build production code that'll just fly and doesn't require a ton of maintenance and doesn't get into deadlocks. And we've staffed the team that way because you need both ends of it. You need extremely good research to do something extremely innovative and bring, a protocol that's highly differentiated. But you also need people who have, actually had decades of experience building scalable systems. And I think there we bring a differentiated product. The other thing I think actually more than team, it comes down to ethos, right? Right at the beginning, you decide what kind of company you want to be. And our guiding principle internally is as decentralized as possible. And so any decision we make, we're like, does this help the distribution of both access, ownership, and usage of this system? So one thing I'll add there is, we talked about how scalability is TPS to some people and how scalability should also be security. I'll add a third. Scalability also should be access to the system. And to wit, we've embraced open programming standards. We're going to support Rust and assembly script right out the gate. But over time, you can program in any programming language that, compiles down to WASM bytecode. And we think that's true scalability, because now we're not a blockchain for blockchain developers. We're a blockchain for developers, period. Right. And, in addition to that, we've added a bunch of, features that people want to build native to the node, so that, we truly scale with developers. You guys, have open access to the system. And the way we've designed it in a highly modular and open way allows it to be augmented by us, a third party, anyone. Given, how we're 100% open source, we expect and really hope that, after we launch a few years from then, we're actually a minor contributor to the network. And, a community of developers basically owns it. We'd love to make ourselves obsolete as soon as possible.
And that's the
for
true
practical
spirit.
reasons.
And that's the true spirit of DeFi as well, and that isn't just held within the Ethereum camp. True decentralized finance or decentralized platforms, more so is what you're building, is designed to graduate towards a full relaxation of any form of administrative control. And a bit initially that we see that there's that necessity. But what I love hearing from you guys is that is absolutely the vision, not only of you, but any of those that uphold those core values of decentralization and trustlessness and permissionlessness. Now, let's go back a little bit to some of those inherent or built-in points of value. Now, the CBC POS, that correction by construction, that is a unique design for the POS model. So do you want to just touch on that, either of you, to just explain why you've taken this approach, what makes you unique, and why this could lead out to be something that really challenges everything we've seen already?
Certainly, I'm happy to take this question. So what makes CBC Casper or CBC correct by construction ethos different is that we started with mathematics first, right? So the protocol, first and foremost, has to have provable liveness and provable security. And so if you look at the highway protocol, you'll find that it's a very dense mathematic paper. And that is the specification that we will consume to go ahead and build out the protocol in code. And then we will take that protocol that's written in code and we will formally verify it against the mathematical proofs. And then that's how you know that you actually have the security you're saying you have, right? So this is an entire process, right? We're in phase 2 of the process right now. We've got the mathematic proofs. We're implementing it in code. And once we have completed that process, then we will put it through the formal verification process so we can have, confidence, right, that the code is in fact representative of the math paper.
Yeah, and that's going to be absolutely key. What about audits? How are they going? Have you conducted any audits with any third party?
We have not conducted audits as yet. We're not far enough down the rabbit hole in terms of completing our work. We need to basically be, code complete. We're not code complete yet. Once we would get code complete, then we would actually do formal audits of the entire code base.
Got it. Well,
that will take a long time to do, however. So caveats, formal audits for code bases it's a very, very long process to get those done. But, there are key pieces that are critical, right?
Right, and Meta, thank you for that transparency, because we, for those who are here for the long haul, and I certainly am, it's good to hear that transparency so that we know you're genuinely here for the long term as well. Because as we've mentioned before, some startups just really weren't from the outset designed to be anything more than shells, to shill and then leave the system. Now, long-term vision is there. You're building towards mainnet eventually. So let's discuss the roadmap, 2020, 2021. How are things planning out? Obviously, you can't give us exact set dates, and that would obviously be not necessarily beneficial for any team given the context of crypto. But what is the general plan of your roadmap?
Yeah, so the general plan of the roadmap, we want to ship something in 2020. I feel pretty confident that, barring attacks in testnet, right? So we have to see how the protocol holds up under scrutiny, right? Assuming everything goes smoothly, we should have no problems, releasing something in 2020. I feel very confident about the team's ability to deliver, and provided that the protocol can hold up to novel attacks and we are satisfied with the performance, we'll launch by the end of this year.
Wow, that's really exciting. Now, Mrinal, one of the things that I did notice looking through just, the way in which you prepared is that you have very strong partners and even stronger advisors. You have strong financial backers. And I mean that in the sense of business orientation. Those parties that I had a look at, from the capital firms and the VC firms, they're very much financially incentivized. They want to see that they're investing something that is going to, provide some return in the future, no question, especially when it comes to equity. So how did you go about securing these kinds of names, or did they just simply look at your team? What was the process there? Because you don't often see the strength of support that you have.
Yeah. So first, I'll talk a little bit about the structure, which will help lead into how we pulled it off. Where we were very different is we didn't sell a single token for our initial funding. The $14.5 million Series A that we raised was a pure equity round.
Okay.
We think this is actually very, very important, because we think one of the biggest problems out there when a lot of tokens are sold for a Series A or seed financing is that you have a very small amount of holders at a very low price that hold a lot of supply. And then when you go public, you have a very large number of holders at a very high price who hold very small amounts of supply.
Yes.
And that's a market dynamic that is totally against the ethos of decentralization or distributed ownership. So we went down a pure equity path. And this actually made it challenging for us because, typically you look at the structure of all these deals, there's a token component to it. We were fortunate because I do think everyone in our equity stack is expecting this to be a 3.5 to 5 year road, because it's standard equity. And so the reason we went down that path means we had to, target people who had that kind of time horizon just by default. I think it was really when we explained why we think there's a huge opportunity to do something extremely interesting in the space, as well as telling them about the team we've assembled that's really, really purpose built to make sure we can do this. They got very excited. So it's a combination of people who saw a lot of opportunity, like our lead investor from Aquitas Group, but it's also people who actually believe in the technical vision and want to use it. For example, one of our large investors was Hyundai via HDAC, Hyundai Digital Asset Company. There are components of our technology that they think could be extremely important to their tech stack. In addition, there were a lot of staking pools that invested. Now, of course, staking pools are pretty long term, right? They want to invest in a company that will eventually, hopefully, be a significant proof of stake player, such that their business can survive and thrive.
Right.
And so we had to go a slightly different route when putting together our investor set. But really, we went after people who realized, at least on the equity side, this is a 3 to 5 year hold. Because
and
really,
Mrinal, I just want to jump in and say full respect, because you yourself, I'd imagine, have invested in certain startups along the way, being someone in the space for a while. I myself also have. And one of the paradoxes was always when you're putting your money into something that's initially that utility token, which was often the case, it often compromised its capacity to be a utility right from the outset. So you differentiating through having this equity makes a huge difference, because it means that investment can be used in the real sense. That's what equity is. And so it doesn't taint or compromise the potential of your subsequent token to function as a utility. You think that's a fair assessment in your vision of how you're going to roll out your own token engine?
yes, that is actually, I couldn't have stated it much better. I think I just add one more thing. I think that's a very accurate assessment. But the second thing was also, we've been thinking about lots of ways to break the issue of having, institutional ownership at a very, very low cost basis, and then public distributed ownership at a very, very high cost basis. I think we've come up with very interesting structures on how to achieve that. There will be some announcements coming up in the coming week or so, private for now. Would love to come back on the channel and talk about it again.
I would love that too, because I will keep digging into those kind of comments.
Yeah, we really think, like, another reason why we went that route, especially the utility route, of course, right? We want it to be a utility. We don't want to violate any securities laws. But more than anything, we really thought we want this to be truly a distributed ownership base. And announcements to come on how
I can't wait to hear these. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but it is exciting to hear this kind of open discussion. So rare is it from a CEO, in that you are moving towards a more equitable approach to the way in which we can release tokens for the majority. Because one of the big issues before is there wasn't just the inequality in equity, but there was an incentive for those early investors to just dump on the market. And that was a huge problem, because once again, they weren't there for the long term. So I really, really do respect the approach you've made, because these supporters, these backers are there with the interests, their own interests in mind, but more importantly, to be there for the long term to support you as you build your technology, you build the use case, you build everything in your infrastructure to be ready. And that to me is really important as someone who wants to support from the educational standpoint, because often we see there's a lack of readiness when they are released. So kudos to you guys for doing it that way. I sincerely mean that. And I haven't invested. If anyone's wondering, I haven't invested in CasperLabs. I just want to support this kind of approach more generally. So that's great. With regard to your protocol, I wanted to find out more about the GitHub, how active you guys are. I had a look at the repos. There is clear evidence right now that it's used on a daily basis. But is it something that you're confident will continue to really grow in comparison to other GitHubs? How active are you, etc.?
We are under active development, so we're very, very active right now. We've got 20 plus contributors that contribute to it daily almost, so you'll continue to see a lot of activity in the GitHub for the foreseeable future. Our goal would be is that we would have more contributors coming in from the open source community in the coming months. Obviously, the release of Testnet would come to that, and we would like to get more feedback, right? So I fully believe in getting feedback from my end users. With the testnet time frame, we would learn from validators what they would expect in the node management and maintenance and support, but then also from dApp developers. We believe we've built a very compelling set of features within our smart contracting engine, and we'd love to hear from folks that are using it. So my goal is that, and my sincere hope is that we would see adoption go up and more people engaging with the GitHub and using the platform to build new and interesting business models, right? Our goal, like I would feel successful if I knew that there were developers out there that were able to build, albeit a small business, but a business using this technology, be it putting out very interesting metrics about the network and charging for those, or creating a new application that they can in turn, earn a nice living from, right? So much as you see individual contributors on, content creators on YouTube, or people making money in their own interesting way. I would love to see that happen with blockchain. That, to me, that would feel like a mission accomplished, because that's what we set out to build, right?
Absolutely.
Is a way to democratize development and really enabling those developers to take their ideas out to market on a great platform where they don't necessarily have to provision a ton of infrastructure, right? That's what's really cool about it. So yeah, that's what I would consider success, for adoption.
So guys, how do we get the traction? Because if we look at Ethereum, for example, a slower system, incredible, success when it comes to organic marketing. Vitalik isn't really someone who's gone out with a big banner waving the Ethereum flag, but he's certainly done a great job leading out the narrative and thus far. So how do you gain some of that traction? How do you get developers on your side to build out the applications, become that robust app or DApp system, that's built on your protocol, built on your platform?
Well, I'd like to put it in context too. Look, Ethereum is a smashing success, and I've always been a huge supporter of that project. I was actually a seed investor in it, and so
wow,
it worked out. I think they're extremely important to the space. To Medha's point, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. I think when people take cracks at older protocols, it's like saying Alan Turing was an idiot because his computer couldn't play games, right? It's like, no, nothing would be possible without it. Look, but to put it in context, I think the blockchain space in general is just under-penetrated. Ethereum definitely has the highest level of penetration, but there's 10 to 20,000 full-time devs building things on Ethereum versus you take the larger space out there, there's 26 million devs. Our approach is people should be doing what's good for the industry at large. We are not trying to, steal Ethereum developers. I mean, the way our system is built right now, we don't even support Solidity. So,
not yet.
Yeah, not yet. I mean, if there's a WASM implementation of Solidity, which they're working on, we'd be glad to integrate it at some time. But if you notice, a lot of people, the first thing they do is like, okay, how do we grab all the Ethereum devs? And that's not really our approach. Our approach is, how do we get people who are interested in building interesting things on the blockchain to build with us? And that's why we went the open architecture route. We've tried to, demolish as many barriers as possible by supporting, programming languages that are widely used and programming standards that are widely used.
Yes, and so that was something that was attractive, is that you took that agnostic approach and allowed developers to have, a lot of options and choice. Rust is a great example of that. Now, you mentioned WASM. That's another key aspect to your approach. You have a great GraphQL interface. If people want to read more about that, they can. Easy management, smart contracts, all of that's been built in to make sure it's well and truly built in for the future. So you mentioned that Ethereum is not really an issue when it comes to competition, and Medha, you've done a great job, referencing all of the connections you have. So what's the next step for, if you either want to comment on how you really, attract more developers?
If I'd actually just add to that, when you say, we don't view Ethereum as competition, we view them as friends,
right?
Ethos-wise, we're very close, right? We're both extremely open source and looking for as much wide distribution as possible. We both don't believe in, people capturing the network. And so, I think, and we're completely open source. If any of our code's interesting to them, feel free to use it. And, we talk to people on the team there all the time. So I just wanted to add that,
Well, I think that's a great point to add, because not every team can say that. And as the CEO, there's a lot of mutual support between CasperLabs and Ethereum. I think that's a huge boon for you, because not every team's going to have that.
I mean, this industry is at such an early stage that if we're thinking about like shooting at each other, it's there's bigger problems to solve out there. We need to come together and actually, create viable products out there. Honestly, there's a part of me that hopes it's us, but if what we do is helping someone else do it, great. That's why we're open source, Right. We've seen how great Linux has become because they took that approach, and, if we're helpful to creating something like that, be super happy.
It's a great point. Now, Medha, I wanted to ask you this because you have the tone of someone that is just a natural leader. I don't want to be obsequious, but you come across like that. So when it comes to breaking down some of those misconceptions in the business world, you're someone I'd want leading this out, because you could not only do that, but you could also do it in the context of, educating on all the aspects of value for something like CasperLabs. So what is your position on how you break through those barriers, given that we're still so nascent as a group of people trying to educate, trying to lead out this technology? How are you going to move forward as CasperLabs to really break those borders down?
Right. So we have some interesting ideas without showing our hand for what our go-to market strategy is. I'll try to keep that a little close to chest, but that's fine. We are, like I said, I come from business. I know what the senior director of engineering is looking for in a platform. I know what the senior director of development operations and site reliability is looking for. I know what the CTO is looking for because I've walked in their shoes. I've done it for 2 decades. So I can go into those industries and I can actually address their concerns from a value proposition perspective, one by one. It's very clear to me what the fears, right? So a customer will not adopt something like blockchain purely out of fear. They have very specific concerns. Business has very specific concerns about the adoption and use of public blockchain technology. And CasperLabs, right, we have built features into our smart contracting interface and our protocol that directly addresses those fears and concerns. And really, when it comes down to it, when you boil it all down, it all comes down to control, right? So when you talk to a business owner and they're saying, if I'm going to use your protocol, how do I retain control? Because I ultimately have to service my customers and I have to take care of my investors. Right. And so we've built features into the system that give them that control, right? And it's interesting because it's a little orthogonal to the entire DeFi movement, and we are all about decentralization. We're absolutely about trust, right? But the questions we need to ask ourselves, the really hard question to ask ourselves is, do contracts really need that strong immutability when they're being built for business? For DeFi, you need strong immutability around contracts. For business, do you really need strong immutability, or do you need immutable transactions? Right. And so when you look at what business needs and what is holding them back from the adoption of public blockchain technology, and you take those problem statements and you're like, yep, we figured that out. They're like, great, because blockchain technology solves my audit problem. It de-risks my platform. It gives me greater trust. And I know I have areas in my application that need trust. Right? So they want to use public blockchain technology. They're just afraid to because there are certain set of concerns that have not been addressed yet.
Right. And you raise a really good point. When it comes to new protocols like Aztec, for example, both of you would know of that. When you see the movement with enterprise melding with Ethereum, with Baseline, for example, what I'm hearing from you is you really understand the context of enterprise and the needs of enterprise as we move into the possibilities of open blockchain. So are either of you able to comment on the kinds of conversations you're having without trying to FOMO, the matter, just trying to better understand the kinds of conversations, what echelons of business, for example, we're talking about big corporations where they're starting to pay attention to the value of something like CasperLabs, and also trying to understand how they can utilize that to their own ends, especially when it comes to privacy.
Right. So, we are in conversations with several companies which already have private blockchain implementations and recognize that they need a deeper trust layer. We are in conversations with companies that are implementing proof of concepts for government organizations where privacy is not so much an issue. We're also in talks with companies about a public-private type of hybrid solutions. I think this is going to be a very big deal for business, right? My perspective on blockchain technology is that blockchain technology, public blockchain infrastructure, will be a trust portion of a larger architecture, right? So in the CasperLabs framework, what we've built is we've built a protocol that is very easy to integrate into a larger application stack, because this is how I see it working, right? I don't see the protocol as being a be-all and end-all for a decentralized application. Rather, I see a larger application using blockchain technology for a core component where trust is definitely needed.
And just saying that,
and integrating that well.
And sorry to interrupt there, Medha, but just saying that means that you've opened up the potential of CasperLabs to a scale that I don't think people quite understand, because whilst the challenge for making the switch into DeFi and into decentralized mechanisms is one thing, to enable pre-existing and mainstream entities to optimize through the blockchain is another. So to provide those two branches is going to be really significant for the growth of CasperLabs and for any who can successfully do so. Now, tough question, and I wanted to know more about this myself. The token itself, can you give us a bit of a rundown on what the plan is there in terms of, do you have any information that you're able to release at some point about what the metrics are, what the total supply is, all those things that the investor wants to know, when the speculative investor, obviously, in that space, but also those who want to utilize that token in the future as well. What info and what position are you at now with regard to the token?
I'll give a brief high-level summary. Total number of tokens will be 10 billion tokens. We want to make something that's easily divisible. And, if you notice, so usually the team retains a portion of it. We've kept that very, very low in our protocol. We've kept that at 8%. So 8% retained by the team, 3-year vest to make sure, like you said, you don't want people dumping other people. And then we will have a developer and community incentive program. It'll be a minimum of 16%. We're thinking about making that even bigger, potentially, and what the gates look like. But basically, this is, there's many modalities, right? So for stuff like identifying bugs, contributing to the platform, and ideally we want this governed by a DAO. So, contributing to the platform, that's one thing. If people want to actually build on the system, it'd be really cool if we create something that looks like a AWS style credit system. Hey, if you try AWS, here's a bunch of credits free, and once you run out, you can choose to use the system further or not. And so at least you're making cost of usage of the platform initially for people who actually want to build on it, low enough that people will give it a shot. So things like that, so we'll have stuff for developers and community. And then, another, call it 6-ish%, which is for advisors and others. Again, all of these are on multi-year vests. And then all of the remaining will be, part of a validator or public sale to the public.
I see.
So the really, the bulk of the tokens are for public consumption or distribution to the public, rather than.
And that's going to be key to also stand the test of time if you want to lay claim to being decentralized as well. Otherwise, once again, when we see those kind of worst case scenarios of 60%, in the hands of the team and the advisors, things like that, you lose credibility. So it's good to hear those things. How transparent are you guys with regard to that information, or is that being released later?
It's already released in our validator FAQ. I will point out that we're updating it for the better. We just increased the size of the developer and community incentive pool. We got feedback. We take feedback from our advisors very, very seriously. And one of them basically said, "Guys, you need to put your tokens where your mouth is, and you need to increase this pool significantly." And it was about a 2-day decision for us. We're like, "Yep, you're right."
Right. Well, it's good that you do sort of have that respect for, your community, for all of the advisors as well, and you responding in kind. Now, in terms of the release of the token, pardon my ignorance, but is it true that you not yet released the token and that you're planning on releasing this later?
Yeah, it'll only be released when the mainnet launches.
Okay, so what sort of time are you thinking there now for the mainnet release?
Mainnet is by the end of the year. Mainnet will be by the end of the year, so the token will be released around that time.
Okay.
I wanted to add one point to what Mrinal was saying. It's a bit of a nuance, but I think it's extremely important. As Mrinal said, that we will be doing a developer DAO for the community and developers. But this DAO is going to be administered not by CasperLabs. we already have, several developers that are going to be in charge of setting up this DAO and actually administering the DAO. So these tokens will be going to the DAO directly, will not be controlled by CasperLabs at all. This is, from our perspective, we feel like the consensus model, or a lot of the other models that EOS and a lot of the blockchain projects have done, where they've sold all the tokens and then centrally controlled via fiat which companies they want to then go ahead and invest in.
Yeah,
and
that's
what we're
not
doing
a DAO.
is we're just going to take that entire model and turn it upside down on its head. And where a lot of these companies say, oh, we've done 20% allocation for as a venture fund or whatever, we're just taking that out right now. We're going to carve that out right now, put it in the DAO, and let the developers actually manage that, right? They can self-organize, self-govern, and decide how they want to create their incentive program and get adoption of the platform. So we really want to just turn it over, right? Like, again, in that ethos that we don't want to be centrally involved in managing or making these kinds of decisions.
That's awesome. It's going to be exciting to watch this evolve too, because very few, I don't know if there's any actually outside of what you're saying, Medha, that have removed themselves from the DAO equation. To be authentically a DAO, from the outset. So again, this is pretty cool stuff that you are doing as trials to move. And one thing I do like about CasperLabs, and having listened to both of you in other discussions, is that there's genuine plasticity in terms of the prospects. You're willing to change and evolve accordingly as you start to, really showcase what the testnets and mainnets can do, so that nothing's written in stone, nothing's, unable to be changed and morphed to suit the needs of the people.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Brad, if I could just add one thing though, like on the developer DAO, just to be completely transparent, right? Like, yes, it'll be decentralized at the outset, but initially we probably need some small set of guardrails, right? Because and the reason is, and I just want to be completely transparent. The reason is, it's not been done before, and the only thing I can tell you for certain is, in the beginning we will get some things wrong. And we want to know what those are before, basically, start at volume 2, see what it sounds like, fix the pitch a bit, go up to volume 5, see what's happening, and then, and we hope that process is very fast. And at no point will we, exert control. It's just like, how open do you make the taps? Just depends on how smoothly it's going. And once we feel like we've come up with a structure that kind of works, because I mean, we could run every theoretical model possible. It's not been done before, so we don't know how it turns out. So I just want to be transparent.
I think you raise a very important point. And just recently, there was a lot of discussion, Mrinal, about the back-end access with admin keys. And I was speaking with a colleague in Teller who's working on doing a POW Oracle at the moment for Security First. And he made a fair point and said, at no point did we ever not intend to have access initially, because we want to make sure that we can not only add code, not only contribute to the network, but allow it to evolve in time, as it is more and more robust. So I think that's the same agenda for almost all good teams, is they want to make sure that things play out, towards that key motive, and that is to have that decentralized system in play and operational as such. So great to hear that you are looking at that outsourced DAO, and that you're not taking, the direct and primary position in that, in maintaining or running it. So it's going to be exciting to see that develop. Now, community is another thing I wanted to talk to you both about. One of the things that's often undervalued, I think, in crypto and in blockchain startups is the imperative of having strong and evolving communities. I've had a look at your different social media. There is certainly a lot of chatter, a lot of discussion, a lot of, especially in Discord, with all of the different things you're doing. How are you feeling about the way that your communities into the different social media platforms are building?
I think it's been going slowly. I think communities do develop slowly, true organic communities, right? Not fueled by an ICO or an IEO or any of those things, right? But like real people that resonate with your ethos, resonate with who you are, right? We've been really focused on building the product, as Mrinal has said, right? So we've been really heads down in terms of building the core protocol, doing the research, finding our groove, if you want to say, in terms of, that the epiphany and finding product market fit and really identifying what we're all about. Decentralization was always very obvious to us, right? But when you start talking about community of developers, you need some kind of interfaces for those developers to connect with you on, right? And so I think we're really at the beginning stages of actively reaching out to start building our community. I think our community is very small right now. We have a small but engaged group of a few folks that are helping us, build what we're building and getting the word out there. But I think you'll see that grow, organically, significantly over the coming months, hopefully leading up to, the launch of Mainnet. And I think
so.
Building a community like this it's a multi-year effort. I think it starts off very small and slowly, and as people learn about you organically is how you really get a high quality community. I like to think about quality over quantity.
I totally am with you on that. Good on you for having that position, because as both of you know, when we've seen shilling as a predominant sort of means for many parties to promote, rather than educate, we've seen the ICO boom, we've seen the IEO boom, and often juxtaposed with those things are short-term mentalities, profit mentalities, as opposed to that long-term vision. So I'm with you on that, Medha. I think it's great that the quality narrative is continuing on. And obviously for those who want to know more, I will put all the information in the description below so that you can access things like Discord and have real meaningful developer-based conversations. And obviously moving out to Medium, reading those blogs, looking into Twitter, looking into Telegram, and etc., to just become part of something that you believe in for the long term. Now, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that have been in the media recently. We've seen things like the BitMEX bungle, as I call it, with the attack on the so-called or alleged attack on their system as a third-party, derivative platform provider. Then we see issues with MakerDAO. So I only wanted to ask you this in the context of threats to, the overall picture of crypto and blockchain in terms of confidence. Are you guys concerned at all about the kinds of things that have happened recently, especially given that you're putting so much time in building something authentic and real for the future?
Absolutely. Definitely these kinds of attacks are a concern. I mean, one of the things I think we absolutely have going for us is that we're using Rust. Rust is a strongly typed language, and it makes it harder for you to introduce errors like this. Not that it's not impossible. You absolutely can introduce errors in Rust as well in your code. But we've given tools to developers to help them check for these kinds of faults, right? And check for these kinds of flaws. That's the best you can do. Software always has defects. That's the nature of software. So what's the best thing we can do as platform providers is provide a set of tools and features and functionality that enable developers to, cut the bleeding right when it starts, right? And so things like being able to upgrade your smart contracts, being able to run your smart contract through a series of integration tests, picking a language that is very type safe, and does a very great job with memory management are key things that we can do to help limit that, right? And of course, there's going to be, audits, right, that would need to happen. And what I see in the future is I do see something not unlike VeriSign today, right? So a long time, if you remember early days in the internet, nobody would put their credit card into any e-commerce shopping cart. It's like, oh, no, I'm not going to put my credit card online, right? And eventually VeriSign stepped in and they did great work, right? They would say that we certify that this is secure, right? And they have all of their protocols and their security processes that they follow. And I see something similar emerging with blockchain technology, right? I see that somebody's going to have the ingenuity to say, we've gone through these contracts. This contract has been audited. You can be sure that your money is going to be secure in this contract, right? So yeah. I think that will eventually emerge in the market. I think it's only a matter of time.
Yes, you raise a really good point. And Mrinal, on that point, please extend that. And also, can you touch on regulation and what your position is there?
Sure, that's great. They actually kind of seg into each other.
They do, yeah.
I wanted to just extend what Medha was saying more from an industry perspective. I think people sometimes put these hacks into the wrong context. So, sure, BitMEX got hacked, Mt. Gox got hacked. But if you put it in context, the actual underlying protocol hasn't ever been hacked, right? No one's successfully done a double spend on Bitcoin or successfully done a double spend on Ethereum, the two that are decentralized enough. And so there's actually a ray of hope there, because if you think about it, blaming Bitcoin for Mt. Gox happening is the equivalent of saying, hey, the bank down the street got robbed, so the dollar is broken, which you might say for other reasons, but not because of that.
Especially now, yeah.
Yeah, or someone hacks into your email and you say, the internet's broken. No, TCP/IP
that's probably a better one. Yeah.
Yeah, TCP/IP is fine. It's just the endpoint had an issue with it, and I think that's the context. So overall, I think that'll work itself out. Now, regulation actually comes into this in a really big way, if you think about it. Now, the reason so Medha talked about VeriSign, and a lot of these things, insurance products,
derivatives,
recourse products, etc. have helped the internet grow, right? There's someone you can go to get an insurance product if something goes wrong. The reason why insurance products and all these things that make the internet usable or the banking system usable don't exist for blockchain because of regulatory uncertainty. People get away with unscrupulous things, and people don't feel safe because they don't know what their recourse is. Tomorrow, if something goes wrong, you can't go to a government and say, hey, I want this fixed. And they're like, hey, by the way, we actually think this whole thing's illegal.
Right.
So I actually think the irony is the lack of regulatory certainty is actually helping bad actors more than good actors who actually want to build something real, robust, and create the kind of transparency and services around the blockchain industry that you've come to expect on the internet or enterprise software in general.
I think you raise a very important point when it comes to all the different products as well, when we're talking about exchanges all the way through to applications, all the way through to basically anything. If you see things like Seychelles or some of those regions in the world where a lot of these enterprises and entities are registered, immediately I start to wonder, or I think, okay, why did you have to go in that direction? Because once again, you raise a very important point, is those that move in that, ironically, that regulated route, they tend to also have more of a long-term vision in terms of working with other agencies, working, as Medha was saying, being able to work, in the context of enterprise or in the private sector. Those that aren't, I think in the future, I don't know if you guys agree, but it would be more challenging, I would assume, in the future when there's greater demand from mainstream.
Yeah, it certainly will. I mean, I do think that'll be a hockey stick moment. People always ask me, like, when does this industry take off? And if you think about the internet, was when the browser was invented. I think the hockey stick moment is really when services and recourse are created around this industry, and regulatory certainty is what will help that. Again, I'm not talking about regulatory laxity. I'm not saying the regulation should be easy. It's fine to have a set of rules and make sure people act appropriately. The issue is, we don't know what those rules are. They keep changing every single day. I mean, we're kind of fortunate, we're domiciled in Switzerland, a very, very legitimate domicile, and in Zug. And the rules are strict. They're strict, but they're very, very well defined. So we know what we can and can't do, which is great. So, we don't do the things we're not supposed to. We do the things that are okay. And I think that's the right approach. You can be strict, but at least let us know where the lines are.
Yes, and we see Europe, for example, leading out a lot of support for blockchain. For they understand the core and inherent value of that as an asset for the future. We see the likes of the US even now paying strict real attention. Even the SEC and the CFTC, they're all looking at this with serious eyes now. Even in my own country in Australia, there's a lot of support for the benefits of blockchain. So many people, I would think, right across the board, who understand the trajectory that blockchain's taking, they're starting to see a confluence of support from not only government, but from the private sector, as we start to try and assert the value of blockchain in mainstream context. It's going to be really exciting to see that if CasperLabs, or when CasperLabs captures part of that market share.
Yeah, I think it would be super exciting.
Yeah,
we're looking forward to it.
Well, guys, thank you so much. I sincerely mean that. And obviously, I've talked a little bit too much for this interview. But Medha, I wanted to ask you just finally, is there anything that you'd like to say, perhaps I've missed, with regard to all the different assets that CasperLabs has, or any of the future, that you want to comment on with regard to development?
Gosh, we're super excited about our testnet that's coming up here. So please do check us out at CasperLabs.io and get involved, right? Let me know if I'm building something that excites you. I would love to hear your feedback, and mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm trying to build something for the space as a whole, and for the developer that would like to leverage blockchain technology but doesn't know where to get started. So I hope that we've built something that will help you all be successful. So that's my message to them.
Well, Medha, thank you for your time, and as a CTO, congratulations on all you've achieved so far. It is only early days for CasperLabs, and I wish you and your team all the best. Now, Mrinal, as the CEO leading out this entire team of very successful engineers, someone who is passionate about the long-term viability of open source blockchains, what would you like to say to everybody, as you're moving towards that key point of mainnet at the end of the year?
Well, I'll start with something CasperLabs specific and then something related to the industry. CasperLabs specific, I echo Medha's point. It takes it takes a lot of people to put together a great decentralized system. So in addition to telling us what you like, tell us what you don't like as well. I just urge a lot of people to get involved. If I had a message for the industry in general, just as a parting thought, I think one thing that's really affected the industry negatively is there's a bit of tribalism. There's the EOS camp, the Ethereum camp, the Tron camp. I mean, look, at the end of the day, we're all trying to create a great product. There should be more collaboration and less tribalism. And not just intra-blockchain. There's also a general, we are blockchain guys. Don't talk to me, Mr. Banker. And I think that's, doesn't really work. I think, the more, if the industry has done so much, closing itself off and walling itself into, little tribes and then walling itself from the outside world, imagine how much more we could do if we, open those doors completely. So, if I had a general belief of what will help, I think blockchain is going to become a major technology regardless, but you want it to go faster, let's stop being tribal. Let's let everyone come in and invite them with open arms and try and do our best to convince rather than coerce.
It's such a great point. So less silos, less focus on individual profiteering, and more about collaboration for the interconnectivity, for the internet of blockchains, so that we can start to meld together, so that we can actually build the next step in technological innovation. And that is going to involve blockchain in a big way, and it certainly is. So guys, on behalf of all those who want to learn more about key startups in the space, thank you sincerely for this long interview. Hopefully it's been of value to anyone who's survived it and managed to get through, but I will put all the information below on CasperLabs that I can find, and hopefully it's been of value. But until the next conversation, thank you once again for taking the time, both of you, to represent CasperLabs and help us understand the movement you're making towards mainnet at the end of this year.
Thanks a lot, Bradley, for having us on.
You're very
Thanks,
welcome.
Bradley. It's an intense pleasure.
Thanks, guys. Take care, and I will catch up if that's okay, and we'll do short, sharp pieces on key developments that you're making. But take care until then.
Thank you.
Absolutely.